Hi, I'm Frank, and I like to do it myself. Today, I have a 2016 Mercedes GLE SUV, and the air conditioning is not working very well, and it gets hot here in Florida. My problem is, when I start it up first thing in the morning, it will blow cool. As the engine warms up, time goes on a little bit, it starts blowing warm air and often doesn't come back. Sometimes I can shut the AC off for a little while, turn it back on, it starts going cold, but then immediately it starts blowing warm air again. So we're going to find out what's going on. First thing we're going to do is hook up some gauges. Now let me tell you, this is what you do not want to use. Don't go to the auto store and buy one of these canisters, hook it up so that it just gives you one pressure and you don't know what else is going on. You can overcharge your system, you can over oil it and make performance worse. So if you do have to replace refrigerant goes not really by pressures, even though that's a good indication, it goes mostly by weight. And I'll show you on the car, this sticker, which you'll find on the front of the car. Sometimes it'll be up here. In the Mercedes, it's right here. This tells you the type of refrigerant and the amount goes by weight. It doesn't go by pressure, it goes by weight. So I had a set of gauges. You can pick these up at Amazon really fairly inexpensively. And you're going to hook up the low side and the high side. I'm going to hook up the high side, which is the larger of the diameters. And now I will hook up the low side. So I've rotated these now clockwise so that they're both open. And when I look at my gauges, I see pressure on both of them. Now this is a static test, so the car is not running, and they should have equal pressures, which they do. Now at 100 psi, you'll go ahead and check that against temperatures to see about the refrigerant level. Now you measure the outside temperature to get that reading. And you're going to compare that with a chart to see what the correct pressures should be. My temperature here is about 82 degrees, so my pressures should be at 90 psi. My gauge is showing 100, and that's really pretty close because 100 here is about 88 degrees. So I think we're close enough that the refrigerant level is correct. Maybe slightly overfilled, but not significantly. Alrighty, I'm going to start the car, and you're going to see how these gauges are going to change. As I start the car and turn it on high, maximum cool, the compressor should kick on, and you should see the low pressure drop and the high pressure rise. The high pressure has come up to 150. The low pressure down to about 45. That's normally what we would like to see. This tells me that the compressor apparently is doing what it should be doing. That's not necessarily true, but that's about what it should do. Another thing you want to look at is the compressor and the pulley, and make sure that the center is turning. With the AC off, it will not turn. With the AC on, it will. I'll shut it off and you can see the difference. The compressor is off, and you should be able to see the center nut is not turning. So that clutch has not engaged with the AC off. And the pressures should start equalizing again, which they are. A little slowly, but they are. It has been over 30 minutes. And the gauges still have not equalized, which pretty much tells me that the expansion valve is defective. I have a Foxwell GT60 scanner. It's going to let me select different control modules. So I'm going to come down here to air conditioning, and I can read codes, which there are none, and I can look at the live data. That leads me to believe that the problem is with the expansion valve. Though I can tell you that my wife's car is the identical car, a 2016 GLE, and everything was the same, and it ended up being the compressor. So I'm going to replace both the expansion valve and the compressor, and I'll do the dryer as well. The expansion valve is located under here. Way down under there. So a lot of this has to come off in order to get to it. Before you disconnect any hoses, you need to evacuate the system of the existing refrigerant. Now, R134A does not deplete the ozone. However, it does significantly increase CO2 emissions in the atmosphere. Take your car down to a local shop, Firestone, this is where I took mine, and have them evacuate the system. They'll do it, they save all the refrigerant, and it's just much better for the environment. So once that's done, you're ready to proceed dismantling things. As we approach, I'm going to show you where the expansion valve is, and if you look at this silver thing right in there, that's one of the hoses that go into the expansion valve. So this part needs to come off, and in order to do so, you can see the windshield wiper is going to have to come off from here. A little bowl or some type of container. I'm using an old pool strainer to put all your bolts in. Don't let them lay around, you'll lose them. I'm going to start by taking this off, which is this Torx screw. A couple over there and over in that section, to free this up before I take the windshield wipers off. You can do the windshield wipers first, it doesn't really matter. This is a 16 millimeter socket, 16 millimeter bulb. Getting the wiper arms off is not that easy. If you look, you can see that there is the threads that hold it on, but then a spline as well. So what I did was, with the arm on, I had the wiper in the upper position and then just started rocking it until it came loose. And that's the best way to get it out. Once you have the wipers removed, this part can just lift up. Now this is where you have your washer hose and everything connected. So you're not going to pull this completely out. We're just going to move it aside. We're getting closer, but we still can't get to those spots underneath there. This assembly needs to be removed. I'm going to undo the electrical connector. Basically, the white tab is you pull out and then it disconnects. And this connector down here needs to be removed also. Assembly out, there are 3 bolts. Here, here, and here. These are Torx bolts, size 12. A lot of times I have a tendency to drop bolts, and it's no fun trying to find them. So if you pack something around it as you're getting it out, if you drop it, that microfiber towel will catch it, and I can pick it up with a magnet or my fingers and save myself a lot of grief. And you need to remove this bolt, which is a 10. Now this piece can lift out. Now we can get to the expansion valve. There are two nuts, here and here, that hold the low and high pressure lines. So you're going to take those nuts off and remove those hoses. Will be the first thing. The nuts are small. That hole is deep. So go ahead and put your microfiber towel in there to catch anything that you drop. All right. My microfiber towel is in place. This is a 10 millimeter bolt head. I'm going to remove that completely before I get to this. This hose is in the way a little bit, so take this off, then take this one. This one first, then this one. Once you have the bolt off, you can then pull any residual pressure will be released. Now we'll go to the second one. Now that I have those hoses disconnected, I'm going to cover them up. Right in the middle, you see those two. Those are Torx T25 bolts, and those are the ones that you want to take out. Now that those two bolts are out, this expansion valve will pull out. Now it is held in by O-rings, so you do need to do a little tugging on it. There are the two connections. There were O-rings attached to these, which I removed, and we'll need to replace those O-rings. And these are the ones that I removed. So we'll find ones of the same size to replace them. Now, I just went to Advanced Auto and bought the O-ring kit. It's about $9, but it has all sorts of different sizes and thicknesses, so that it's easy to get the right O-ring. So these are the O-rings that I have selected and the ones that I took out. I'll be lubricating them with the compressor oil and then putting them on and putting it back in. This is my replacement expansion valve. I did buy a Mercedes expansion valve, though I honestly think a Four Seasons at half the price would have been just as good. There's the part that's going to go into the car. Well, this is the part that goes into the car. This is the part that now the hoses are going to attach to on the outside. So it's going to be in like that. Basically, you're going to put new O-rings on in the inside, and when you do the O-rings, lubricate them with some PAG oil and put them on. The process is going to be the same as taking it out, just in reverse. There's a rubber boot that fits over this part of the expansion valve. So make sure that you get that rubber boot over top. That's the temperature sensor, and that needs to be all covered up. There is a torque specification for these bolts for the expansion valve to the car, and that's 8 Newton meters. All right, that's torqued in. Now it's time to connect our hoses again. And I'm going to need to replace the O-rings, so I'm going to do that next. I'm going to put these in the way I took them out. I'm going to do this one first, and then this one second, and I'm going to put my microfiber towel underneath here in case I drop one of those bolts. There is a torque specification for this nut also. It's 10 Newton meters. So I have that in. I'm going to torque this one, and then I'll place the other one. Before I put everything back together again, I'm going to hook up my gauges and a vacuum. I'm going to pull a vacuum on the system, which you need to do anyway before recharging. But with this, I'm going to be testing for leaks. I shouldn't have any, but if I do have some and need to redo an O-ring, let's say, that may gotten mashed, then I would just as soon do it now as opposed to after having everything put back together again. So I'm going to pull a vacuum. I'm going to let the vacuum sit for about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. If it maintains the vacuum, then I'll be good to go. I'll put the rest of it back together again. All right, I've got a vacuum on the system now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the valve off of the vacuum. And now I'm going to wait about 30 minutes to make sure that it maintains the vacuum. If it does, I did everything right. All right, everything's back together again. I kept a vacuum monitored on the system with my gauges overnight, and it maintained a good vacuum for now that almost 12 hours. So I know that I don't have any leaks. I'm in good shape. Everything is back together again here. My wipers are working. Everything else is working. So the next thing I'm going to do is, normally would be to recharge. In this case, I'm going to replace the compressor, and we'll do that in the next video.